Welcome to this morning's webinar. My name is Mary O'Brien. I'm a consultant in the FME division here at One Spatial. And today we're going to look at connecting or using FME to connect to almost anything. So lots of different ways or things that we can connect to. So just going to start with a little background about ourselves. So One Spatial, we're a spatial solutions provider, and we've got a number of offices working across the globe, but our headquarters are here in Cambridge in the UK. We work with customers across a number of key industry sectors, so things like utilities, transport and engineering, and all sort of levels of government. We've got a number of technology partners that we work with, and the one that we're interested in here today is our partnership with Safe Software, and they're the vendors or producers of the FME product set. So just a little about the FME division. We're a team within One Spatial that specialises in the FME product set. We've been, or One Spatial have been a reseller of Safe Software for a number of years, and we're a platinum partner, and we support all of the FME products, so FME Desktop, FME Server and FME Cloud. We also actually use FME within our own solutions. We've got a dedicated technical support staff, and many of our staff are certified in a number of the different certifications that you can get from SAFE. So if you have any questions or problems that are FME related, I'm pretty sure we've got a team of people here that can help you out. So if you want to get in touch, it's fme@onespatial.com, and I'm sure we'll be able to help you out. So some of the services we provide, so we've got options for helping you evaluate the software, so helping you, build a business case for the products. We also undertake bespoke consultancy projects, so if you've got projects that need completing or investigating, then you can ask us to come and help you with those. We also provide training, so both public and private training, and at the moment we're providing that online due to, of course, the restrictions because of COVID-19. So we've got training courses ongoing, so we've got public training and also private training. We'll also provide one-to-one mentoring, so we can, spend some time with you working on your particular project, reviewing your workspace and helping you make good progress. And then if you're on an annual maintenance contract with us, you get all-inclusive our technical support. So that's accessing our support desk and getting access to our team of technical experts. So if you want any more information, please contact us on fme@onespatial.com. So today's webinar is all about connecting, so using FME to connect to pretty much anything. So this is the agenda or the plan for today. Well, it's going to be more tutorial style webinar, so we're going to be working with FME, just working our way through some demos. And those things, the things I'm trying to show you, are how we can connect to files, so whether they be on a server, on a web page, or within a zip file. How we can connect to pretty much any format. How we can also then decide when we want to connect. And then other things like connecting to data that exists in a database or connecting to like online resources. We'll then look at some new functionality within FME, which is packages. which relates to how we connect to things. And then we'll look at connecting to other things like APIs and tools that are also possible. So that's the plan for today. As I said, it's kind of a tutorial style, so we're going to break out now and go over to FME Desktop and make a start on that. Okay, so this is FME Desktop. If anyone on is new or not terribly familiar with the products, this is what it looks like. You've got your canvas where we're going to build our logic or do the work, and then we've got other windows that will help us. So the navigator where we'll see all our settings, and down here we've got a visual preview and we'll also see the log. So to start with, we're going to do a very simple connect to a file on a server. So we've got readers and writers in FME, that's the terminology, and a reader enables you to connect to a data source and read the data from it. So here I've got just a CSV file, the big tree plant sites. This is some open data that we'll go and have a look at. It's just sitting there on my file server. And if I choose the parameters, we can see that FME is scanning that file, understanding it and giving me options for how I want to read it. So one edit that I've done here, one change that I've made is I'm going to ask it to automatically or dynamically build the geometry for me. So I've got some X and Y coordinates, and instead of those coming in as just strings, I can tell FME actually they're coordinates, and it will build the geometry for me. So we can see down here it's processing. Now I've got something on my canvas that's reading the data for me. So I'm going to use this caching feature, which means that I can just run the data and cache the information. This is new in more recent versions of FME, if you're used to the older versions. But it's really helpful for demos like today, where we can see down here in the bottom then a preview of the data. So here I've read in that Excel file and I've also built the geometry on the fly. So it's still there as a CSV. I haven't had to change it to another format. Okay, so I'm connecting to a file sitting on a file server. And over here, on the left-hand side, I get all my settings. So we can see here the settings around where is the file. So let's say I want to read in the file from another place. Let's say my colleague has placed it somewhere else, and I go to run my process and things now have changed. Well, I can simply edit the location of that file and run the process again. So I don't really need to make much changes. It's very simple to edit the information from here. Okay, so now let's imagine that I had more files. So if I quickly show you what I mean here. So here inside my in folder, I've got some tiled data. Okay, so the idea here is that I've got a bunch of files, I've got the same structure, but rather than read just one file and then the next file and the next file, I want all of these files to be read together as one. So that's also possible, and it's one of the options we've got here. So we can select multiple files or folders. So if I add the folder, the tiles folder, that's where all of that those files were. And here it's just defining different filters, but I'm looking for just the CSV files. I can remove that one now. So now I'm saying read all of the files that sit in the tiles folder. And the other edit I need to make is, because this is looking for a fixed file name, I'm going to merge the feature types. The feature type is the representation on the canvas here. It's the term that FME uses for the data set. So if I turn this on and use the wildcard, it basically says any named file can be read through here. So you can see that that updates to say all. So when I press play now, what will happen is all of the features from all of those files will get read through this one feature type. So we've got the same information, but if I scroll over here and look at its feature type name, let's pull this across so we can see. So this feature has come from this file. If I sort this the other way, this feature has come from this file, and so on. So I've now read all of those files in through this one data flow, through this one feature type, which then makes things more efficient for managing my process later. So this is really useful for data sets where you're reading tiled information. So for example, really common examples would be reading imagery data. So let's say ortho photos, they typically come in tiled folders, and you can just point FME at the top level folder and ask it to read all of the orthos from all of the subfolders using this methodology. Or similarly, something like your master map holding. So again, if you get that as you know, map info or tab files, or as reshape files, some GIS file formats like that, you typically get it tiled. So you get you know, a set folder structure, and again, you can use this method to easily read the data into your workflow, connect to the data, and work with it, and it's more manageable. So this is the data set that I've been using here. Just to point out, it's open data. It's a really useful website, data.gov.uk, with lots of different data sets that are available to you. So there's lots of different files on here, and there's basically anything you might want to connect to that's government data is available here. Once it's classed as open data. So if I go and look for the big tree plant sites, this is data that's come from the Forestry Commission, and you can read all about it here, but you can also download the data from here. So this is what I've done. I've downloaded the spreadsheet onto my machine, but we could also, let's say, get the shape file. So we can come in here and save the shape file, and I want to save it to my in folder. And you can see I've already got it there, so I'll just cancel that and use the one that I've got. So I've got a shape file sitting inside a zip file now on my server. So I want to read a shape file. Well, that's simply another format in FME. So this time, instead of a comma separate file, I'm going to go and get an Esri shape file. So I can't see the shapefile there because it's inside a zip file. So if I alter this to look for all file sources, and I've got my shape that's tied up in the zip file here. I've told it it's a shapefile, and now I'm telling it to look within the zip file. And if I do that, FME will look inside the zip file to read the shapefile. So again, really helpful because you don't have to unzip the file to be able to read it. You know, so really helpful for storage. So on. So there you go. The data has been read from there. Okay, so this is reading shape file. Oh, one other thing I forgot to show. So looking at the CSV file. So here on the navigation pane on the left, I've got my CSV file and I've got my shape file. Something I also wanted to show from here is the option to select this file from the web. So chosen it as a CSV from the file server. We've shown how we can dig within a folder to read all the files of that type. And we can also come over here and specify a file, a URL. So to get that, I was simply coming in here and copying the link from here and pasting it into here. It's got a bunch of stuff on the end. So I'm just going to pare it back to the file bit. So now when I run my process, it's actually reading that file directly from the web server. So that's, really useful way of perhaps keeping your data current, keeping it up to date, because it's every time you run the process, it's going off to that URL and capturing the data as it exists at that point. So it can be really simple but really effective way of helping you to manage your data and keep things up to date. Okay, so just another option from here is that you've got an API available. So if we look at this one, GeoJSON, this means that the data is going to be available as JSON strings. So I'm just going to up to like Control-C to copy that. So if we come back here, we think, well, can FME connect to that? Well, yes, of course it can. And the way to do it is to add another reader, and that reader this time will read JSON or GeoJSON. So because I've been preparing the demo, it's already here, but if we go and look in more formats, you can see that there are hundreds of formats available, lots and lots of different file formats, web formats, lots of things that you can potentially connect to. So if we go and look for the GeoJSON, it helps if you can spell or type at least. So I'm now looking for the GeoJSON, and if I paste in the link that I've copied from the website, the parameters button, and FME is now going off to that website, scanning the data and bringing it back for me to work with. So again, if I press play, I'll see that FME has gone and read that data. Okay, so lots of different options even for connecting to the same data set, lots of different ways that we can do it. If you come across some data that you're not sure how can we connect to it and how would we do so, this is a really good place to come. So safe.com/integrate, and it basically details all of the formats that you can connect to, and then there's the option to swap to the formats matrix, which is just a different representation of the same information. But here you can see for all of the formats, information on which FME product or which edition of the product and which license is needed. And it also gives you information on whether the support is for reading from that format or writing to that format, or both. So lots of really useful information on here. Recommend this is like the first place to go to when you come across a data set that you're not too sure of, or you've just not encountered that format before. Okay, so we've looked at connecting to data sets. We could also connect to data to write to that format, so generating information. And so in FME, they are writers. So if we connect to a format, let's say a shape file, Just write it to my out folder. And I'm just going to copy the parameters from the reader. So it's just asking me which one. Just choose one of them. In this case, they're all the same. And I'm hooking up my data, so this flow line. So data is going to be read in and then travel down this flow line and be written out. So there we go. It's written out a shapefile for me here. Okay, and if there was a different format I was interested in, let's say I wanted to write an AutoCAD file. That's another one that's quite popular for spatial data. I could go through a similar process. But a clever thing, or something people might not be aware of when they first encounter FME, is the option for a generic reader and writer. Sorry, can't spell. So this gives you the option to choose any format. Okay, so this means when I go to write my file, I can choose at the point I'm writing it which format that is. So say, for example, here. So now when I go to run my process, I get to choose, well, which format are you interested in? And I can choose from any of the formats that are stored, so the 470 odd formats. So I'll choose AutoCAD DWG for now. And as I run the process, it's now writing out a shapefile and a DWG file. And next time I run it, I could choose to write out instead a PDF or write out a tab file. Okay, so lots and lots of options for connecting to different data sets, wherever they may be, whether they're on a file server, whether they're on a web page, and then lots of options for configuring what application you want to write that data out for. So setting the format, and you can do that quite neatly using the generic writer, and then there's a generic reader similar. Okay, so they're the traditional readers and writers. So data gets read in and data gets written out, and they're managed here on the navigation pane in FME. And then in recent years, there's been a move to instead use transformers, and transformers are the bits of code that we use to do something to the data. So we've now got a feature reader and a feature writer transformer that will do the same job as a reader and writer. So we're going to look at those next, and they're basically giving us the ability to decide when we connect to data. So if we start off with this part here on our workspace, so I've got a map info tab file using a traditional reader, and I'm reading in a sample data set here. It's just some points. They happen to be house points. And I've added that in using a reader. And I've decided, so I've got 50 points, and out of those, I've just decided on some that are of interest. I guess I should just say that the demo is really quite contrived, and it's to try and show you functionality. So I'll try as best I can to try and relate it to real world examples. But this might be some logic, a whole bunch of different transformers that are doing some logic that's appropriate to your data set. But here I've got some Excel data, so I've got some geometry, and then I've got some non-spatial data, and I want to join the two. So I've got a feature joiner that's going to do that job for me. But first off, I want to add the data. So I'm going to use a feature reader to do that. So it's very similar here then to the interface that we saw for the reader. In fact, it's pretty much the same. You choose your format, you choose your data set, you set your parameters, and away we go. And the interesting thing here is that the creator transformer, if you've not come across it before, it's acting like a trigger and to initiate a process to happen here. So I'm going to run the process as far as here. So I've got my 13 house points that I'm interested in. And then I've got a whole bunch of data sitting in an Excel field that I want to join to it. So this is your traditional join, let's say, from your classic GIS joins. For the IDs are matching, then I'm going to merge the data. You can also use a feature merger transformer for this, with feature joiner being the more recent addition. Okay, so that's allowing me to join data and pass it on in the workflow. Well, the additional benefits that the feature reader give us are the ability to decide, well, how much data do I want to read? So here, based on the fact that I'm interested in just 13 of these houses, I want to read addresses. Okay, so I've got some addresses sitting here in a little database. So it's a spatial light database. And I can use then a where clause to match the data. So only read in the data for the houses that I'm interested in. And that's a really efficient way of processing your data. So you're basically doing the selection on the database and only reading in the data that you're interested in, which is a lot more efficient for processing. So similarly here, I've got another feature reader where I've decided, do you know what? I've got some land parcels that are sitting there in a shapefile, and now I want to apply a spatial filter. So I've got polygons, and I want to read in just the polygons that interact or intersect with my house points. So again, really efficient. I don't have to read in all the land parcels and then do like a clip or a join on the two. I'm now reading in just those 13 land parcels for the house points that I'm interested in. Okay, so that's just trying to demonstrate the idea of being able to decide when you connect to something. And the data I've used here is just from, again, open data that's available from the data.gov website. So you've got the land registry, open data with the land parcels, and also there's house sale prices. They're both available there for you to use and connect to in the ways that we've shown. So we've got a feature reader, and similarly then we've got a feature writer transformer. So if I enable this one. So again, this is the idea that based on some logic or based on a decision in your process, you can decide, I'm going to write my data out now, or connect to a database to write the data out, whatever it is. So in this case, I've selected a couple of features, and I'm now going to write that data out to an AutoCAD file. I've got just land parcels. And the interesting bit is the summary report here. So the summary report, if I flick here to the feature information, will tell you information on how much data has been written. Okay. So that's useful. If I look at another example of the feature writer, so this one's a little more complex. So I've got multiple ports coming in from my different data sources. So these become different feature types or different layers in the data set. I'm writing this out to a database, and then the additional piece I've done here is allowed the data to carry on in my process. So I've done that by just ticking on this option, output ports within the feature writer. This means that the data comes into the feature writer, gets written to, in this case, Spatial Light database, but it's now also exposed so I can continue processing. So in my workflow, I can write to the data and then continue processing and doing whatever other logic I want to apply. So it's been really useful, and especially this ability to continue processing afterwards. So let's run this example. So we're connecting to a database, and we look at our summary report again. So we're finding that we've written 39 features this time, and actually we've got a list telling us how many features have been written for each of those classes or each of those feature types. So to show another type of connection, and it's something you might want to do in this kind of scenario, is now that I've written data to a database, well, actually I might want to connect to that database, and there's transformers for doing that too. So we've got the SQL executor, so that will allow you to connect directly with the database as opposed to using the format readers and writers. So the example I've built here is now that we've written data to the database, we want to go and actually check the counts in the tables. So doing so directly in the database. So the first thing I've done is just exploded that list so that we get the information, more readily available. Sorry, I meant to enable this. Hang on, there we go. So in the SQL executor, I'm connecting to the database, and then I'm specifying a SQL statement, the same as you would run directly on the database. And that's exactly what will happen. So actually, if I hit run here, it will run it against the database. So you need to be a bit careful if you're using this to do something like drop table. And then I'm just exposing the thing I've calculated, so the count here. So if I run to this point, I can see now that the feature writer over here had calculated that it had written 13 features. And then when I go and count the features in the database directly, it's also reporting 13 features. So it's just a way of verifying that the process has worked the way you'd expect. And you can then just add a simple tester transformer that's going to check those two. Okay, so another option you have for connecting directly to a database is to use the SQL creator. So very similar to the SQL executor, but in this case, it creates or it initiates the data. So it's the trigger. So it's a really useful way of connecting to a database directly to grab the data. So all the work is being done by the database. So if you've got indexes and so on the database, then it's using all of that, and it usually works out very efficient. So here, for example, I'm just reading some data from a boundary line table sitting in a Postgres data set. And here the data is written in here. But the real advantage of this is, you know, this SQL statement can be quite complex. So you can do your joins and everything in here. So pulling in data from multiple tables exactly as you need it for this particular process. And then it's here directly here in FME, just waiting for you to build the rest of your logic and add your other transformers. Okay, so we've looked at some of the transformers. I think you're getting the idea, hopefully, that there's lots of different kinds of transformers that are allowing us to connect to different things, whether they're different formats of data or databases, or we're going to have a quick look now at what we call the connector family of transformers. So these are lots of different transformers that perform connections to different services. You can see there's lots and lots to choose from here. So I'm just going to pick a couple to look at. So here we've got the Google Drive connector, and they all work in a kind of similar way. So the Google Drive connector is going to allow me to connect to an account on Google Drive, and then, you know, upload a file or download a file or delete, and so on. So to make this connection, we use a web connection. So I'm going to show you that. So again, this is common to all of them, but I'll show it here for Google Drive. So I've got a Google Drive account. It's now going off to authenticate it. So that's my account. And this is the part where it's looking to register the FME app with Google Drive itself. So this needs to be done just once. And it's as simple as that. And that web connection is now available for me to reuse whenever I need to. So I'm going uploading the file that I've just generated. So it's stored in an attribute called the summary here, has told me the name of the data set. So it's stored in an attribute, and I'm just uploading it to a folder here. Oops. Okay, and that's what it's done. So I don't think I've actually logged into Google Drive to show you, but you get returned a shareable link, direct download link, and so on. So that's pushed that up to Google Drive. As I said, there's lots of different connectors. There's another one here, which is the FME resource connector. So if I just show you how this is similar. So again, very similar. I've now got to use a web connection, but this time for FME server. Again, I need to pass it, where is the file? So that's the path to the file. And again, where do I want to put it? And then it's going to return me links that I can directly access those. Okay, so lots of potential connections, and they're all using web connections. So where you can manage these web connections is here for your tools, FME options, and then you've got your web connections here. So you can see that there's my web connection for Google Drive. I've also got one for Gmail, Google Sheets, and so on. And these ones look a little different. They've got like brackets with safe.emailer and safe.google sheets, and these are actually packages. So the packages is something I'm going to come on to now in a couple of seconds, but just first to show you some of the other options. So you've got your database connections, which are similarly stored here, and your web connections are stored here. If you needed to create a new web connection, you can create them from here. You can see there's lots of different options available depending on the service you're trying to connect to. And then you need the ID and the access key. And if you go into manage services, you'll see all of the different services that are possible to connect to, and then the different templates that you need to complete, typically needing to like alter the client ID and the client secret and give it the URL for your own thing, your own web service. So I mentioned packages, and packages are a way that FME is now releasing new bits of code, so new changes to the FME install, where you don't have to rely on the next release. So you don't have to wait for the next release of FME for some improvements and changes to become available. You can simply grab a package which has those specific improvements, install it, and get those improvements within your existing FME installation. So really clever way of releasing new fixes and new changes to people. And in some ways it's come about because connecting to services, so connecting to APIs and so on, can change all the time. So some of the authentication can change, maybe the location for the URLs has changed, or how the requests need to be structured has changed. Lots of different things changing at different times. So packages are a way of dealing with that. So if we go to the hub, so this is the FME hub, we can see here, if we filter for the packages, lots of different packages available. So a lot of people interested in this one, which is SharePoint Online. So it's got some information here on what it is. Here you can see what I alluded to before, this kind of identifier that tells you it's a package. And packages can contain different things. So some of them will contain transformers, some of them might contain web services or web connections, some Python, others will contain readers or writers and so on. So there's now a SharePoint Online connector transformer that you can use to connect from here. So just one that I'm going to demonstrate is the emailer transformer. So again, this is enabling changes to the emailer transformer that deal with web services and so on, that allow you to use, say, the new and improved version of the transformer. So if I try and link this back to my demo, so here where we've tested whether our data loading process has gone correctly, we might then decide, oh, let's notify somebody, let's send an email. So we're using the emailer transformer here, and you'll notice that the icon looks quite different, and that's something that indicates it's a package. And also if you click into the properties, you can see again the emailer name up here has this safe.emailer syntax, which indicates that it's come from a package. So I've got just my details in here, and I've built myself like a little email template. So we can hit OK on that, and basically that will send an email with those details and it all works quite neatly. And then I have a similar one here, which sends a different template, but same idea. Okay, so those emailers are easy to grab. So if you start typing on the canvas the way you would for a normal transformer, you can see it appears as a normal transformer, and that's because I've already installed it. When I say I've installed it, if I go to my tools, FME options, and I go to FME packages, you can see that I've already installed this. This is a list of all the ones I've installed. So if I swap back here and show you, you can just simply download the transformer as an FPKG file, then double click on it and it will execute and install itself. You can remove packages at any point by just removing them. And then this option here is if you have downloaded a package and then a newer release becomes available, it will be listed in here to tell you that an update is available, and you can simply hit update. Okay, so another package or another option I was trying to show. So if I look now at the Google Sheets writer, and it's automatically installing it. Okay, and that's because the writer that I've chosen in here is the Google Sheets writer. Okay, so you can see it's already using my web connection, and it's got this syntax on the end which indicates that it's coming from a package. So again, same idea that I can, depending on what's available in the package, whether it's a transformer or a format or so on, I can use them in the way I normally would in FME. So if I simply go and look for, that one was Google Sheets. Oh, come on. So the Google Sheets package, and in here you can see it's a format that's available. Okay, so then some others that are available that you should maybe check out are things like the SharePoint Online connector, the ArcGIS Online connector. They're both available as packages. So you can either search for them here and stream them down, so grab them from here. They're indicated by this different icon with a little box, little package. You simply click on it, and it will download and install that package. So the package, remember, could contain a transformer, the web connection, maybe a format, a couple of different things, but that's now installed and here on for me to manage. Okay, so really useful addition in FME packages that's providing the ability to get improvements or edits or fixes, especially to things like web services whose authentication or credentials or just connection details may change, and packages allows a quick and kind of efficient way for SAFE to update those details and release them to us anew quickly without you having to wait for a new release and do a whole new installation of FME. Okay, so final lot of sort of ways that we can connect or transformer transformers that we can use to connect to things are the caller transformers. And there's a bunch of these. I've just listed a few here. So we've got the HTTP caller, and that's pretty much, you know, the go-to transformer for connecting to stuff, connecting to most things. Most things, you know, will have an API. So whether it's SOAP or REST, but you know, generally REST APIs these days. HTTP caller is the transformer that's going to let you do that. And we'll look at just a couple of examples of that in a moment. You've also got things like the FTP caller. So, you know, that will allow you to upload or download files from an FTP site. So for example, you know, our customer support site, we can use it for that. There's also a Python caller, so if Python's your thing or you're an Esri bod, then you know it's a really good way of integrating FME with other tools. So allowing you can use Python and the Python caller to call your Esri tools. So whether that's Arc Toolbox or Arc Desktop or whatever. So you can do that. And then there's the system caller, which is more generic almost. Anything that you can run on the command line, you can call using the system caller. So it means FME can, you know, call a program or call a batch file. It could be things like tools that you've got that, you know, some of the older or freeware GIS tools that are specific to particular areas, like GRASS for image processing. It runs on the command line, so you could initiate it from FME using system caller, or Saga is one that we've worked with before for environmental modeling, or Geoda, which is like a stats package that again it would be possible to connect to. So lots and lots of different options. It's really down to what have you got and what do you need to do. So just a final few examples then, just looking at the HTTP caller, because it really is the gold star, the thing that allows you to connect to so many things. Just using a simple example here, one that was shown before, which is just hitting an API, and this is the postcodes.io API. And it's a really great site. You know, it's all using all open data for the UK, lots of different endpoints that you can use depending on exactly what it is you want to do. So here, very simply, we're going just hitting the API with a postcode and looking to get the coordinates back. So while that's running, I'll just show you the HTTP caller. If you're not familiar with it, you simply place the URL that you want to hit here. So this is the base, and then we're passing in the postcode value that we want to request. We're sending a GET request, and then the response body is going to store the response. So the response body here is JSON, so you can see there's the coordinates we're interested in, and here's all this other information of different boundaries and so on. So we can then use some transformers to manipulate that response. So here I've used the JSON fragmenter and the JSON flattener, but there's lots of different specific ones you can use. So here I've got my postcode, and I've now got my eastings and northings. Okay, so if you type JSON on, you'll see all the different transformers that you can use to manage that, and similarly for XML, they're the two, that's what the responses tend to be, JSON or XML. So here's just another example. So this time we're reverse geocoding. So I've got some input coordinates, X and Y's. This is a really useful transformer, actually, the attribute reprojector. So that's going to reproject those X and Y's for me to lat longs, but without having to like build any geometry. So I think it's a really useful one. This time now we're hitting the a different endpoint. So we're specifying the lat and long, and we're also specifying here the radius, so the search radius from which we should see the search radius for the postcodes. So again, I'm using just some different fragmenters and flatteners to see the response. So within 100 meters of those coordinates, you've got all of these different postcodes. And then it gives me a distance, so I can sort and then pick just the nearest one. Okay, and then don't forget that you could bundle all of this information up, this logic, into a custom transformer. So lots and lots of different options available. And then just final examples. This is connecting to a document management system. So again, it's the HTTP caller, but maybe a more complex example or more real world example. So in this case, we've got a staged set of calls that we need to make. So first we need to make a call to the authentications service. So we've got to hit the API login. We're posting some information there, which is my connection details. And then we need to get from the response a session ID. So it could be a similar setup in different document management systems. Then for every subsequent call, we need to pass that session ID in. So here, when we actually hit another endpoint of the API, so we're searching for some document information, passing in that session ID, and we're also passing in a search criteria. And the search criteria we've had to build here. So specific syntax specifying the criteria for this particular document management system. So again, it can get as complex or as simple as you like, and it's all possible using FME. Okay, so just to quickly finish up, we've looked at making connections to lots of different sources. So whether that's files, whether it's files of all different formats, whether they're sitting on a file server or sitting on a web page. We've also looked at the feature reader and the feature writer transformers, which are, allowing you to decide when you might want to connecting to a database. And then we finished up by looking at connecting to online resources. So we've got the connector transformer family. We looked at packages and how they're giving us new and exciting ways of getting the new and the latest functionality available, and then connecting to other things, the APIs and tools using the caller transformers. I'm running a little late, so if you need help getting started or you're not sure where to go next, then please do reach out to us. We've got a bunch of training, webinars like today. We've also got all our previous webinars that have been recorded available. There's the FME community, which is a really useful location to go to if you've got any questions. Search for questions that people have possibly already asked and answered. Or just get in touch with us directly. So it's fme@onespatial.com. If you're already on active maintenance and support with us, then you can contact us directly on support@onespatial.com, and our team of support guys will be able to, and girls should be able to help. And if you're looking at or interested in getting some training, we're now doing online training. So If you go onto the website, here's the link. You can register for any of those. You can have a look at the dates. I've listed them here. So we've got some intro training in November, some advanced training happening in December, and some server author training happening in October. And if you have any questions or need any information on training, it's Dale Parkinson, my colleague, who's the best person to speak to on that. And finally, we've got a new, or we've got an event coming up, which is our Smarter Data, Smarter World conferences. It's going to be online this year, the 9th to the 12th of November. So please do take a look at the website and register your interest. It's coming up quite soon. And that's it for today.